Most of the world now is in an uproar over the travel ban that Donald Trump hastily imposed upon citizens from predominantly 7 Muslim countries. But there was another ban that was quietly proposed last week, and this one has far wider implications. It's the ban on cash. The European Union's primary executive authority, known as the European Commission, issued a roadmap last week to initiate continent-wide legislation against cash. There are already a number of anti-cash legislative measures that have been passed in individual European member states. For example, in France, it's illegal to make purchases of more than 1,000 euros in cash, and any cash deposit or withdrawal to and from French banks exceeding 10,000 euros within a single month must be reported to the authorities. Italy banned cash payments about 1,000 euros back in 2011. Spain has banned cash payments in excess of 2,500 euros. And the European Central Bank announced last year that it would stop production of 500 euro notes altogether, which eventually will phase out cash completely. But apparently these desperate rules don't go far enough. According to the Commission, the presence of cash controls in some EU countries, coupled with the lack of cash controls in other EU countries, create loopholes for criminals and terrorists. So that's why the European Commission is now working to standardize a ban on cash, or at least implement severe restrictions and reporting across the entire EU. The Commission's roadmap indicates that forthcoming legislation is likely to be enacted next year. This is happening, and it may serve as a perfect case study for the rest of the world. A growing bandwagon of academics and policymakers in other countries, including the United States, UK, Australia, etc., has been calling for prohibitions against cash. It's always the same. Cash is a tool for criminals and terrorists. Harvard economist Kenneth Rogoff is a leading voice in this war on cash. His new book, The Curse of Cash, claims that physical currency makes the world less safe. Rogoff further states all cash is being used for tax evasion, corruption, terrorism, the drug trade, human traffic, and so on. Wow, that sounds pretty grim. Apparently pulling out a $5 bill to tip your valet makes you a member of ISIS now. Of course, it's a total nonsense. A recent Gallup poll from last year shows that a healthy 24% of Americans still use cash to make all or most of their purchases, compared to the other options like debit cards, credit cards, checks, banks, transfers, PayPal, etc. And the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco released a ton of data last year showing that 52% of grocery purchases, along with the personal care products, are made in cash. 62% of purchases up to $10 are made in cash. But even a much higher amount of $100, nearly 1 in 5 purchases are still made using physical cash. This doesn't sound like nefarious criminal activity to me. It seems that perfectly normal, law-abiding citizens still use cash on a regular basis. But that doesn't seem to matter. A bunch of university professors who have probably never been within 1,000 miles of ISIS think that its ban on cash will make us safer from terrorists. You probably recall the horrible Christmas accident in Berlin last month in which a Tunisian man drove a truck through a crowded pedestrian mall, killing 12 people. Well, the attacker was found with 1,000 euros in cash. The logic therein is to ban cash altogether. I'm sure he is also found wearing pants. Perhaps we should ban those too. The idea that criminals and terrorists only deal in bricks of cash is pathetic fantasy regurgitated by the seriously uninformed. The 9/11 attackers spent months living in the United States, and they routinely use bank accounts, credit cards, and traveler's checks to finance themselves. And both criminal organizations and terrorist networks have access to a multitude of funding options from legitimate business and charities, along with access to a highly developed international system of credit. A cash ban wouldn't have prevented 9/11, nor would it have prevented the Berlin Christmas attack. What cash controls do affect, however, are the financial options of law-abiding people. These policymakers and academics acknowledge that banning cash would reduce consumers' financial privacy, and that's true. They're totally missing the point. Cash isn't about privacy. It's one of the only remaining options in a financial system that has gone totally crazy, especially in Europe, where the interest rates are negative and many banks are on the verge of collapse. Cash is a protective shelter in a storm of chaos. Think about it. Every time you make a deposit at your bank, the savings no longer belongs to you. It's now the bank's money. It's their assets, not yours. You become an unsecured creditor of the bank with nothing more than a claim on their balance sheet, beholden to all stupidity and shenanigans that they have a history of perpetrating. Banks never miss an opportunity to prove to the rest of the world that they do not deserve the trust that we place in them. And from now on, anyone who wishes to divorce themselves from these consequences can simply withdraw a portion of their savings and hold cash. Cash means there is no middleman standing between you and your savings. Banning it for any reason destroys the option and subjects every consumer to the whims of a financial system that is stacked against it. Now what do you do?